Welcome to Read Between the Wines, where two bibliophiles discuss our love of the written word from cover to cover and cork to glass. Pour yourself a beverage and join us for this week's episode. Cheers! Action! And here we are. Be careful not to do your things or...
My reactions are actually like, it says that I have a little notice bar at the top and it says they have turned off my reaction effects.
Rude.
So I'm gonna have to go in and find those because I cannot be limited. I need
surprise confetti.
Surprise
confetti is great.
What is life without surprise confetti?
Great question. And a good place to start for today's episode, which is our overview of our February book reads. So we did this back when we had January. We did all of our January book reads, and now we have the books that we read in February that we get to chat over. So,
and can I also just preface with, buckle up. This was a short month, but we have a lot of books to cover for some reason.
Do we?
Me, not so much me. I'm going to be like, let me say my little piece about like the several books that I've read. And then we're just going to turn this into a Meg episode because
I had some time.
Meg has had so much time.
And I got on a kick, and we'll talk about it, but I definitely got on a kick. So it's a thing. Would you like to start or would you like me to start?
Let's see. So I kicked off. Well, I'm not going to go in order, but we're going to talk about it. So February,
Perfect.
I was thinking love and pink and like, ooh,
you
that
dressed
kind of
appropriately.
thing.
We did our normal dressing thing where you were like, oh, I'm going to wear color. And I definitely was like, I'm going to be the absence of.
Yes. It's just how we operate. I got new ears. Clearly they are on theme. Like, clearly I have a brand. It's fine.
I like that you're true to it.
So keeping with my theme, I decided to read a lovey-dovey book. I was like, meet me at the Cupcake Café? Okay, yes. Like, that's it. If there's ever a time to read it, it's in February, right?
Right? Yeah.
I gave this 2 stars.
A 2-star! A 2-star! Which we talk about is like, I feel like 2 stars are hard, which means it wasn't a horrible book, but it also wasn't one that you're recommending.
It was a slog to get through. It's 300 pages, like, which is not terrible. That's standard book.
Right.
100 pages in, we were still like, coming into this book, I was thinking like Hallmark movie, like
they move pretty quick.
Feel good, like it's gonna move quick. We're gonna see the issue, like you're gonna see everything coming. No, we were still dwelling on this girl's problems, like, and just setting it up for so much negativity and so much drama through the first third of the book. And I couldn't. And
Did you DNF it?
I did not.
Oh, you finished it.
It took me a while. Like, this one took me a while to read because I was like, oh, I kept seeing it and I was like,
it's bad when like, book. If I pick up a different book while I'm reading a fiction book, if I pick up a different one and I'm like, all right, like, we'll come back to you. We'll finish you in the month, but we'll come back. That's not great.
It was very tough. Once I got past the first 100 pages, it was super cutesy. It's about a lady who is having a relationship, like a secret relationship with her boss, who is like all about money. Like, they're definitely 2 different people. Yeah. She's definitely like the secret chick.
She's a sad chick.
She's a sad chick. She's not what he usually dates, and she's treated as such. And then she decides to open. She actually gets fired, and her boss never warned her. Just fired a whole group of people.
He didn't fire her though, right?
He did.
Oh, shoot. All right, so he's not great. Please tell me we don't see this man.
But he keeps coming back, and yes,
naturally,
she does keep going back to him. But during all of this, she gets this wild idea to open a cupcake cafe because she bakes
Okay.
stuff, snacks and stuff for everybody in the office, and
Yeah.
everybody's telling her how great she is. Her grandfather taught her to bake. He had bakeries, so like she's super close to him, so we get to see that relationship. And so it's her, and so I really liked that piece of it.
Yeah.
But this dude kept coming back, and she kept like, I'm like, you have so much better like
He's
options
like
and
ants.
opportunities, and
Yeah.
he just keeps coming back. And then close to, like I'd say the middle, second, third, he decides that he wants to buy the area and develop it. And he's like, oh, I want to buy your thing. Like he never believed in her along the way and was like, this business is going to fail. Like go get a receptionist job. Like he thinks he's
Oh my
like
gosh.
helping. And he's like, oh, this is a great little area. I'm going to buy everything. You'll make so much money just off the sale of all this property. And so now, like, all the people that she's built relationships with about this cafe are now pissed because they're like, you knew all along. And she was like,
I
I
did not
didn't.
know.
So there was a lot of tragicness
Yeah.
and just like stuff that you were like, no,
No, that
that's
sounds like
not
something
what
that
I
would
was looking
upset
for.
me. Yeah, that sounds like
Yeah,
something that would just piss me off.
yeah. You
Oh,
want like, I don't know, and maybe that was me just being misled by like the cover and the title,
the
but I
fact
was
that it's
like,
called
oh,
Cupcake Cafe.
Hallmark-ish,
Yeah.
and we're not gonna get that serious. No, we got serious, and I
Yeah,
was
I did
just
not
not
read
having
it.
it.
I know that we talked about this before, and you were like, "Did you read this?" And I was like, "I don't think." Yeah, no, I did not read that
It
one
was very
because I would
similar
have
to one
warned
you had
you.
read.
Yes,
Yeah,
very similar. But I definitely would have warned you and been like, "Don't do that."
yeah, yeah. No,
Mm,
that one. That seems to be a theme, though. Me being misled by titles and like
only
what I'm
this month.
reading. We'll talk about it in the next one too.
Only this month. It's okay. Maybe it's just February. February, the month of misleading.
That's right.
That's why it's so short.
It is. He couldn't handle that much.
No.
Okay, so
Fair.
let's start. How many books have you read this month?
Six? One, two, three, four, five, six. Six. I read
I was
six.
gonna say, I think it's like six or seven,
Yeah, I
but
think because I
okay.
think I read eight last month. So I
This
think I
is
did.
nuts.
It is. And like my little app was like, "You're on track to reach your goal by June." And I was like, "You shut up." Because now you're making it a challenge. And I
Now
don't
there's
want a
pressure.
challenge, right? And
Hmm.
also,
Hmm.
my like April, May, I will probably read half a book because I know like those are really busy months for work and for
You
everything
know
else
it's
that's going on
coming.
and
Yes.
travel. Like I know, and it's not like I'm trying to pre-read. I just have the time right now and I want to do it. But it like those months are definitely going to be much lighter. So hopefully I'm still going to make my goal. It just won't be in June because that's ridiculous because then I will have to extend my goal, I think, and that will be a completely different conversation. But I did read six books. I have five of them here because I gave one. I already passed one on to
You've
be
already
read.
passed them on. I love
I've already.
that.
I'm good, right? I did it.
Yes.
To the point that they were like, "Oh, is the do you have your stamp in it?" And I was like, "I do. You may take it. I have already
It has
stamped
been
it. Go
stamped.
ahead." Right?
It
Because
is
I think I'm.
official.
Oh, yep. I stamped this one too. So it's got like the little. You can't really see it, but like you can almost.
Yeah,
Um,
kinda.
it's that little embossing thing, so you can like it feels funny. So we can actually get through three of my books at once, which can make
Okay.
this a little easier on us, right? So I got on to a Madeline Martin kick, the author, Madeline Martin. And I read one of her books last month. That was the Book Lovers Library, and I talked all
Yeah.
about how much I loved it, right? And
Hmm. Hmm.
it was England and it was World War II and it was historical fiction and blah blah blah. Loved the whole thing. Well, we kept going because I read that book and then I was like, I'm buying all of them. So
I
I
need
think
more.
right, I think I bought in total four of hers. So it was the Book Lovers
Interesting.
Library. We have the Last Bookshop in London. There's a theme. We have the Keeper of Hidden Books and the Librarian Spy.
Interesting.
Right? So they're all books about books, right? Which we can always have another episode on at some point. But these all have to do with World War II, right? And so the
Okay.
first one, like I said, the first one was in England. The Last Bookshop in London is definitely clearly in London, which was again fantastic. And then we got to the Keeper of Hidden Books, which is in Poland,
Okay.
and it is about so the Last Bookshop in London, pretty, you know, easy to figure out what that one's about. The woman in that one, she's basically tasked. She has to move into London where she's not used to being. She has to find a job, and you usually have to have like a recommendation for somebody if you want to work in like a retail space. She doesn't have one of those, and so she ends up talking to her mother's friend, and her mother's friend's like, look, there's a dude down the road, owns a bookshop. He doesn't do a good job taking care of it. He's really like curmudgeon-y or whatever. Like, I can get you a job there. She's like, okay. He doesn't want her to work there. She's like, I don't really care about books. Like, it's fine. And then of course ends up realizing that she's good at what she does, and so he agrees to keep her on for, you know, her initial 6 weeks so that he can then give her a recommendation to go work in whatever retail store it is. And it's basically her journey through that and actually trying to like save the books, and you know, their bombs are falling and things are happening and like things are getting ruined, and there's many layers, and I loved it. I cried in the Book Lovers Library. I cried in the Last Bookshop of London. I think I cried in every one of these books, but not in a way that made me like sob, but more of a way I was like,
cry.
oh yeah,
like a heartwarming cry,
kind of, but also one where you're like, I understand that pain sucks. And there are certain things where like I read a couple of like one of them and I was like, I wish it hadn't happened like that. Like, I get why, but I wish something else. And it didn't ruin the book or anything. It just, I wanted something else to happen.
Could have made you feel a little better about it.
But I think it had to happen that way so that you feel the full effect of what was happening.
Why?
And so it had to, right? Oh, yeah. Right? So there's a lot of that. The Keeper of Hidden Books was about basically a woman, and her best friend is her best friend's Jewish. And so it's when everything's coming into Poland and, you know, Nazis are showing up and all of a sudden they're kind of rounding people up and how that happens. And she and her friend were, you know, studying to become librarians at one point, like into it or whatever. And so the Germans come in and end up starting to take books out of the library and making sure that they're destroyed. So they're like choosing which books to keep and which books not to keep. And they're saying you have to go destroy these, like send them over or whatever. And they start taking their extra copies and putting them in a warehouse that nobody knows about, like in the basement of like a half decrepit building. And so she ends up being the person who keeps like, you know, secreting away these books and still trying to get them to some of the people. And it's a very good book for that. And the fact of like how they saved certain things and, you know, what was required. And it's a good book. And then The Librarian's Spy, I want you to read.
Okay.
This one is about a woman who's actually a librarian at the Library of Congress. And she gets sent over to Portugal. So she gets sent over to Portugal, which is technically neutral. And her job is to go over and collect a whole bunch of newspapers from different sources, bring them back to the embassy, photograph them, and have them sent back to the United States so they can kind of keep an eye on what's going on there. But it's about her, and it's also about another woman who is in France, and she's part of the resistance in France. So you've got French resistance, you've got American librarian, and their paths do cross in a very interesting way. And I enjoyed this one as well. So,
okay, that's a little more, close to home. We've been there. We know about this.
We
like,
have
this
been there.
Real...
So I was like, I want you to read this. Cause like it literally starts out, she's like, my favorite part of my job is being in the rare book room. And you're like, oh my God, I know where that is.
Oh my God. Same. Yeah. We've been there.
I definitely want you to read that one just because it was good. Okay. Right. Parts of it, I want to say that one is probably not as hard as the other two to read from a historical fiction perspective.
Okay, fantastic.
So if you're looking at like,
cry.
I didn't cry. Did I? I don't think I cried in that one.
Okay,
not memorably cried, right?
I'm liking this choice out of the other ones you've read.
Right. So, but I'm telling you, Madeline Martin is she just writes well. They're a good read to the point that I was like, I have to keep.
You have to keep them.
I just have to keep reading them. I have to keep just submersing myself into her world. Yes. Yeah. So that kicks off 3 of the books on my list, but I definitely was on a Madeline Martin kick. And I want to say that I probably read those. I think I read them almost in a row. Where I was like, Madeline Martin,
I saw them come up. Yes. Yep. So does she have more? Did you buy all of them? Like, where are we at?
She has some in different languages, which I really like. Like, I definitely did not buy the one that was in Spanish. I think I got most of the ones that I could find that she had in that same vein. So I have to
Okay.
go back and see if there are more now that I've exhausted my portion of the collection.
Quickly exhausted, might we
I
add.
did. I did. To the point that
Yeah.
actually we also recommended the Book Lovers Library as a book club read. So there's a group that's reading that
Oh.
book now because they asked for a historical fiction. So they were like, hey, do you have any historical fiction recommendations? And I was like, you're in the right place. How many
Yes,
recommendations do you want?
you are the one to ask.
I was like, how many recommendations do you need? Like, do you need a
How are we
year's worth?
categorizing
5 years
them?
worth? What are you looking for?
Yeah. Alphabetical, like
Right? What
year,
kind of
what are we talking?
protagonist are you looking for? I
Such a
did
loaded
recommend
question.
I did recommend Kristen Hanna's The Women first because that one is like a nursing story historical fiction, but they'd already read it. So I was
Ah,
like, we're on the right
as I
track
said,
then. Like that's how I
they
knew. I was
already
like,
know.
ah, you've already read that one, so we're good.
See, and this is what we were talking about. If you enjoyed this, you'll like this.
Yes. If this
You
is the
are on
kind
the
of story
recommend.
you
You just need
enjoy.
tags, recommendation
Yes.
tags.
I also had somebody reach out to me and they were like, I think that my entire like collection of Nancy Drew is at my mom's house. She was like, I'm gonna have her go look, and if it's there, she's like, you can have it. And I was like, I'm sorry, what?
Done.
I was like,
You're like,
what
I
were
have
those
so many
words?
words.
Right? And I was
Thank
like,
you.
I am just sitting here screaming. So in a good
Thank you
way,
is the only appropriate
right?
response.
The only one that's not gonna scare the villagers. So, so fun, exciting things, right?
That's so cool. I love that.
Right? I was very excited. What did you read next, or what else did you read? Since we're not going in order.
Let's keep in the vein of ways I was misled
Okay, these
by
are very
my
different
own
themes.
mind. Ugh. So the Immortalists.
Oh, that's a really pretty cover.
It and these little dots are shiny. I don't know if you
Is
can
this
see them.
mistaken magic again? Because this looks like it could be a magic book. It's mistaken
Mis-
magic. There's no magic.
There's there's a little bit of magic, but not the kind of magic I was expecting.
Is it like card tricks? Because that's. Stop
And
it.
hold, hold on, we have a lot to unpack with
Okay.
this one. So I picked up this book because it talks about four children, four siblings. They're all 2 years apart. Um, Growing up. Now, I almost didn't pick it, almost turned me off because it starts in 1969. And I was like, ugh,
You're like,
I
that's a
can't,
real time.
that's history.
That's real life. I don't do that
No,
here.
thank you. But I kept going because this is about these four children who find a fortune teller, a psychic. Like there's a rumor that she can tell you the date of your death.
Oh,
And
I don't want to know
and
that.
like, well, and that was the thing. Like, would you want to know? And these kids were, I mean, they're kids. So of
Yeah.
course they're like,
Sure. Why not?
why, like, what is this
Right.
sorcery? Like, let's go. So it's their story of going and meeting this woman. And then once we have that initial thing, they all get the dates of their death. Like they all get something told to them. And then the book
In the
breaks
beginning?
apart. Yeah, yeah, right
Oh,
away.
oh, all
Now
right.
we don't know. Like some of them share with us
Okay.
what the date is, and some don't. Um, and then the book starts. It's in four parts, one for each child, and it is in the order of their deaths. So we get the
Well, you don't
history,
know that when you
and then
start.
right, like you
Right.
don't know that.
Okay.
And so basically, it's how these four individuals use this information. Some are fueled by it, some are scared of it, some run from it, one tries to change it. Um, and so it's their story. So the first one, he is a young man and he's like, oh, well, if I don't have that long to live, I should probably go live my life the way I want to. And he can't do that in his Jewish family. So he
Okay.
leaves and heads to San Francisco, where he is a gay man. And this is during the late 70s. So it's talking about the Stonewall riots and like
Right.
all of their rights that they're not getting.
Yeah.
And then it brings in the AIDS crisis. And that's when we lose him. I'm sorry, there's a lot of spoilers. I apologize. But then that is like the basis for the other siblings because
Right.
now they're like, holy shit, this is real. Like that's the date that they said. And so now it's everybody coping with his death,
Right.
looking at their own mortality. Um, so the second one, she is a magician and she has learned a lot of sleight of hand and card tricks and death defying Houdini type stuff.
Okay.
And so she tries to devise, she's like, maybe this is just something that I can bend the reality of. So that's
Right.
kind of where the magic comes in.
Okay.
It's the psychic or the sorcery in the beginning and the dates and everything, and then her trying to infuse the magic. And so I was like, thought this was going to be a whole lot more magic
Yeah. I
based
thought we
on
were going to be a
like
lot of like, I mean, it had sparkles, honestly.
it had sparkles. I'm like, and so I did like I did with the other book, my plaid and plagiarism. After I got done reading, I was like, what the? And I went back and read the cover, and I was like, okay, like clearly I misled myself somewhere. But I gave this book 4 stars.
Okay.
This was so well written.
Oh.
It was amazing in that it made you like question what would
Mm-hmm.
you do if you had the opportunity, and then if you did take the opportunity and you did figure it out, like how would you live your life, what
These are literally
choices
the
would you
four
make?
ways, right? The way you described it was like you have
Yes,
honestly four options when if you
yes,
choose to find something out like that. Like, and what do you do? That's crazy to me.
yes,
And I
but
honestly
it
don't
was
have an answer for you right now. If you were like,
I
"Hey,
have
what
no
would you do?"
idea.
No clue. No clue.
I don't know, like, well, and I think that's the thing, right? Like you could sit here and say, I would react this way. This this is exactly what I would say. This is
Right.
exactly what I would do. But when you're like in that situation,
Yeah.
you don't know because now everything changes. I don't know, it just feels like it would be
Exactly.
different. So
Yeah, because I can
I'm
definitely
not
say
sure what
like
I would choose.
would you not? Like that would be an easier decision for me versus if I did and then now I have to choose how to live my life.
Now
That would
what?
be a harder
Now what?
thing. Yeah.
Yes. But it was very cool the way they all kind of came back together as a group, um, but how they all dealt with it
Yeah.
throughout their time. And just, there is no right answer. It's
I
just,
don't think there
what would it
is.
be?
And that's
And
hard for
it
me.
was so funny because I was like, because Greg was like, well, what star rating are you gonna give it? And I was like, I don't know.
I'm
Because
not sure.
3 didn't seem great. Like that seems like a mediocre average
Yeah.
book, right? Like it's a fine book, but this book, and he's like, well, like a 4 is someone that is something that you would talk about, you would tell people about, like that kind of imprints on your soul. And then like a 5-star book is like
You
world
have to read
changing,
this.
life
Yeah.
changing. You're
Yep.
telling everybody about it. And I was like, it's probably a 4-star then
Yeah, I know.
because I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to remember it. It was thought provoking
Yeah.
without like feeding you or telling you
Yeah. It transcended the
how to
pages
feel.
because it
Yeah,
was probably one of those that
yeah,
like you read it and even I would assume in the middle of reading it, your perspective changes a little bit, or at least the way you think about it changes. And you're like, I don't,
yeah.
I thought this, but maybe I don't think that. I
I
think that's the
don't
hardest thing
know.
for me with books that
Yeah,
make you think so much is that I thought I knew and then
right?
maybe I don't know.
I had a
And
thought
right,
and now
sometimes
I'm
it's nice.
questioning.
Now everything is a mess again. So
Yeah, yeah. So I
it's
really
hard.
enjoyed that one, even though I misled myself.
Misled, magically misled.
Yes, yes. But I
Definitely.
recommend it. Definitely.
Perfect.
Great book.
Perfect. We like that.
Yeah.
Let's see. The next one after the three that I had already talked about, the next one that I read was the one I do not have with me today, and it was called Funny Story. And I think I talked about it and I showed it in the last episode. because I was like, this is like a love story that I'm going to read and finish around Valentine's Day, which I did. It took me a day and a half. It was a real quick
Is
read.
this a Emily Henry?
It is not. It just sounds
Oh,
like it.
okay.
No,
It's got
not
the
an Emily.
same like cover. I'm seeing the cover and I'm
Yes.
like, it's that bright
Did
like
I? Maybe it wasn't
it's
funny
like
story. I'm
blue
gonna
and
double check
green, I think.
because I will say the last time that I gave like that I said I had read a story, it was not the same title. I had messed up the title
This
when
is
I
true.
talked about it here. So we're gonna double check it real quick and see what we actually read.
Because
Can
I'm
we?
picturing this in my mind and I feel like the
Funny
cover
Feelings.
is
That's why I
like
see. Not Funny Story.
funny
Funny
feelings.
Story was
Okay,
the other one.
okay.
Funny
Yeah.
Feelings was this one. It was by Tara DeWitt.
Okay.
Tarah. Tara.
Okay.
And it is adorable. Super
Okay.
adorable. It's a woman who is a comedian, right? She's a stand up
Okay.
comedian and she's being managed by a gentleman who was a comedian. So he was a really, and they end up meeting in some like weird way. And she's awkward and funny and a little bit weird and, you know, the whole thing. And he's kind of like, he was a comedian and then he just stopped and disappeared and then decided like, all right, I'll manage this girl, right? I think she's got something, I'll manage her. The part that I really loved that was like an extra little like nugget of fun for me is that he has a daughter. He has an 8-year-old daughter who is deaf. And so the reason that
Okay.
that they end up becoming friends is because he's trying to salvage a birthday party at one of the first clubs that he ever performed in because they were supposed to have like a water park birthday party and it's raining. And so he's like, I have no idea what to do. I'm a single dad. Like, what happens? He ends up calling his buddy, taking the girl and her friends over to a nightclub before,
The
you know, like a
comedy
bar, a
show.
nightclub, right? A comedy show club, before opening hours or whatever. And this girl comes walking in and she's like, you have to give me my job back. She's like yelling at the bartender or whatever. Ends up going over to the little party. And she's like, this is a terribly sad party. But she notices that there's a cochlear implant on the daughter and immediately starts signing. So she already knows ASL
Yeah.
before she had even met this family or the father and daughter. And then it just goes on from there. She gets invited to be part of a an all women comedy tour with people that she absolutely loves. And it's kind of the transition of all of that. And it's one of those, what is it when it's like, whatever the trope is where they have to like pretend to be together stories, love stories.
Okay.
So it's one of those where they have to pretend to be together and then we figure out kind of what happens in the rest of the story. It's great. Like I said, absolutely adorable. I giggled. I enjoyed her a lot. Like I don't always enjoy the main, weirdly, right? I don't always enjoy the narrator of the story. But this one you get to hear from his perspective and her perspective. And I actually really enjoyed both of them as characters and their side characters.
Oh.
So there wasn't, you know, it's showbiz. There can be some sleight of hand and some, you know, nefarious things that happen. And this was very cool in the way that they portrayed, you know, the comedy scene. And so I really loved that one. I thought it was really cute. To the point that like when I passed it on, I was like, I know you're already reading something else, but also take this one.
This one won't take much time from
Right? I was
you.
like, you can check out both books from this library. Please do.
This is a two
Please
for
take
one
it.
deal.
Right? But it was really cute. And like I said, super fast read. And I kind of like blew through it and I was like, oh, that was nice. Like it was a nice, especially given the fact of all of the historical fiction I've been reading, which was very heavy given where we are in the world. It was a nice reprieve where I was
Yeah.
like, I needed something a little bit light and a little bit happy and
I
a little
need a
bit fun.
break that's not so close. I was thinking when you were talking about like hiding the books, I'm like, there's been so many banned books that
Yeah.
people are like buying copies because they're like, we
They
don't
don't
know
know. They're
when this is
worried.
coming back, you know? So,
Yeah, they're worried.
yeah.
So there were several parallels while I was reading the historical fiction books, and I was like, "Ooh, I don't feel great about this. So let's read something better."
Love a good escape book. Yes.
Yes. So yes, Funny Feelings was a good option for that. Highly recommend that one.
Okay.
Yeah, probably not a
Okay.
5 star because it was like a like I said, quick read or whatever, but it was probably like a
Yeah.
3.75 or a 4.25 or something
Like
like
a
that.
solid like high three. Yeah.
Yeah, a
And
solid
those
read
are the
this
ones
book.
you just lose an afternoon in
Yeah,
and, feel good and you just go on. Yeah, we
exactly.
love
So
those. We love
it's one
those.
that I'm happy to pass on and share.
Nice.
What else you
I'm
got?
torn on how to use
Oh,
that segue. But I think I'm gonna go back to my own segue. I'm not gonna use yours.
don't. Do your
We'll
own thing.
we'll go back just so we can get this one cleared.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen this one. I've seen this on a bunch of lists lately. The Midnight Library.
I think I've seen it, but I've not looked into it. It looks
Yeah.
busy to me, so I'm like, I'm fine.
So, busy's a good word.
Oh, okay.
So, this one, February, love and everything, also deals with death. In the first chapter, we are counting down till our main character unalives herself.
Oh no.
Um, and
Is there a trigger warning on that or something in the beginning?
no, it's written beautifully, and like
Oh, okay. Okay,
we
so
don't
we don't
don't see
feel
that.
traumatized.
It's
Okay.
kind of like the feelings leading up to it, and
Got it.
her whole life has been a mess, and nothing has gone to plan. Everything's gone to shit. Like it's
Right.
just not great, and
Mm.
she's just tired
Okay.
of suffering, um, and just her confidence in herself and her love for life. It's just gone. So somewhere in the in between of life and death,
Mm-hmm.
there is a midnight library. Well, for her, it was a library. You find out later that it's different for everybody.
Okay.
But in the midnight library, it is her and her spirit guide, basically, who is acting as a librarian, who was her best friend, librarian mentor in real life.
Oh, okay.
She is now caught perfectly midnight, suspended in time in a library of her own life. And all the books on the shelves are decision points. So, had she
Oh.
made a different decision, her life would have looked like this. So, it's like it has her
Oh
book of
my.
life.
Yeah.
So, it is a massive library, as you can imagine, because there
Yeah.
are tons of like how your life could go.
Yeah.
And she's been living with these regrets her whole, throughout everything, never thinking she made the right choices. And so
Right.
the first book she has to look at is her book of regrets. And it is so heavy, it is so thick. She's blaming herself for a ton of things. And so that's where she immediately goes back to. So she finds those books. Well, if I had just done this, if I
Mm.
had just done this, if I had
Right.
married this man,
Yeah.
like my life would be better. And every time she goes, if she goes and she's truly happy in that life, then that is the life she will assume.
Oh, okay.
However, the ones that are immediately coming to her mind as regret points don't fulfill her. Like she's there and she's like, oh, this is not better, and
Right.
like comes back. But each time, and you can only revisit each book once.
Okay.
And it's like your body, your subconscious knows if that's not where you're truly happy. Like she
Okay.
could, because there was one that she convinced herself she was, but she could
Mm-hmm.
feel herself being pulled back, and she was like, no, no. You can only visit the book once. After that, it's completely shut off. And throughout the story, she has to keep checking in with her book of regrets, and it's getting
Okay.
lighter and lighter and lighter
Oh,
because
okay.
she's realizing like this life choice was for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
This life choice wasn't in line with what I wanted. And she ends up in a completely different, like, because everything she thought right in front of her that were regrets or that gave her a bad life was not what had done it. And so it
Mm.
was her figuring out all this stuff and like coming to terms with,
Yeah.
do I want to live? Because at the end of this, she can then make a decision. She's been suspended. And so she can make a decision, continue on to death, or, if she does find a life within the book.
Interesting.
Very
Huh.
interesting read. So also makes you wonder if you
Yeah.
could go back and do parts of your life
Over again.
differently, would you?
Yeah.
And then what would that actually look like?
Right. And would it be the
So,
better that you thought it was?
right.
What did you rate it?
Because huh?
What did you rate it? Do you remember?
I don't, but I can look that one up.
Okay. I was like,
Let me
good,
see.
because like I don't know. It seems that would be an interesting read for me. You know what I mean? Where it would probably be super thought again. Why did you pick such heavy books for February? I mean, I say
I
that knowing what I picked, but I definitely didn't pick anything like
I don't
life
think I knew.
changing.
Like I don't think I knew. I gave that one a 4 star.
Fair. I would
I
assume.
gave it a 4 star. I will tell you, now that I looked at this, I just remembered some of the reviews like crucified it as
Oh.
a self-help book described as a novel. And I'm like, I mean, if that's what you needed to take from it, maybe that was your,
Yeah, you're
maybe
like,
that
but I
was
think it
how
was
that
fiction.
lesson needed to be delivered to you, because maybe you wouldn't have picked up a self-help book. Like, this is me talking to the reviewers who are like,
Right.
clearly that's not your vein.
Right.
But it was just an interesting reminder on like how we can convince ourselves of things, like how small
Yeah.
we are in the whole scheme of things, and what would you do differently if you could? And would you? Also,
So many thought provoking questions.
heavy, heavy, because
Right.
February, why not? It's a short month.
February show so short will just make everything hard.
Yes.
Great.
So that was that one. I definitely recommend it. It was great.
Do a lot of recommendations this time. I think we both do. I think we read good books this time for the most part.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? I have a weird turn for this one. I
Okay,
counted it
okay.
because I read it out loud, which I think
Aha.
was the thing.
Oh
So
yeah.
I grabbed the wrong one, but because I put the other one back already. But we read um, the first book in the Chronicles of Narnia series.
Yes,
And so I
yes,
have
yes,
the
yes.
entire set of books, right? And so we read the first one. We just finished it last night, so this was perfect timing because, like I said, literally just finished it. It was called The Magician's Nephew, is book one,
Okay.
and the kids do a March readathon at school. And so we've started to kind of calm ourselves down and get off devices. It's part of the routine now that when they're here, about a half an hour, 45 minutes before we go to bed, we will all sit down in the family room and I will actually read to them. So it took about a
I love
week to
that.
get through the
I was going
book.
to ask how long it took. Yeah.
Yeah, we're only doing one or two chapters, right? To the upset of my children, which I think is so funny because you
I
would
love
think, I
that.
mean, they're busy, right? They like to do
Yeah.
things, they like to play, they don't like to sit still. What child does, right? They don't like to sit still. But I will tell you, in probably the first 8 chapters, I think Addie just sat like perched next to, like, on the arm of the chair where I was reading. And then they grab, so now they kind of just get into a routine where, like, Addie will sit on the couch, Ryder will pull out some Legos while he's listening, Knox is, playing with a car on the floor, but they're all quiet and they're all
They're
listening,
tuned in. Yeah.
very tuned in, to the point that, like, when I come to the end of a
It's
chapter
like
and
an audiobook for them.
right. And I will tell you, I also do voices with it because why,
Hmm.
like, why not? And especially
Why
like
not?
these are all, the first book is written, they're in England, yes. So you've got not great at accents at all. You've got one guy who's a cabbie, right? He's from the English countryside. He comes to London. He doesn't use the letter H at all, and so he's got a very, like, and it's written so well that you can just put the voice into it and it makes sense, right? You've got the uncle who is trying to be posh and he's like got all these opinions and he's like super forceful, so you have his voice, right? You've got the queen, you've got the kids, so like when you're reading it out loud, you kind of have to give them their different personalities. But I will tell you, the voice I chose for Uncle Andrew was very hard on my throat. And I chose it. We got like halfway through, and I was like, all right, like, I'm exhausted and I need some water. Like, this was not the right voice choice. And Addie was like, well, you can't change it now. That's his voice. And I was like, I'm
You can't.
aware. I can't. I
That's
have to do
it.
the rest of the book. Thank God he didn't speak a lot for the rest
He
of the
didn't
book
have.
after that happened. But there was one
Yes.
chapter that was super heavy on his voice, and I was like, I'm going to lose my voice reading out loud. So
Yes.
I think we had 4 chapters to finish last night. And I told them, I was like, I think we have 3. I was like, 2, we'll do 2 chapters. I think there's 3 chapters left. And then we got to the end of the second chapter and they were like, come on. Like, just finish the book. They were like, we can't it's just one more. Just finish it. And I was
Yeah.
like, all right, we'll do one more. And then I was like, oh, there's 2 chapters. I was like, there's
Oh,
2.
wait.
And and Ryder was like, you're going to finish it. He was like, you would finish it if it was just you. He was like, you would stay up late and read it. And I was like, You are not wrong.
One, how dare you? Two,
Do not call me out.
you're not wrong.
Right as I sit next to the cup that says one more chapter. Like my cup literally says just one more chapter.
Might be a
So
theme.
yes, so we did just one more chapter it, and we finished the whole thing, and immediately Addie was like, I have questions. She was like, are we going to see the lion again? Are we going to see the horse again? Are we going to see, like, there were so many things that she wanted to know. So the nephew, the magician's nephew, is not my favorite story, and I don't know that I've read all of them or that I can remember all of them, but I know that that one's not my favorite. But The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is next. And
Okay,
so we've
I was
set
gonna
the
say.
stage. Yep.
Yes.
We've set the stage for Narnia. I'm excited about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I'm excited for Prince Caspian. I'm like, there's certain things that I'm very excited about. And I also know there's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe movie. There's the Prince Caspian movie. So I kind of want to read these, and I don't want to tell them that there's a movie quite yet. So I want to read it and then have them watch the movie afterwards and see what they think. Because the movie is beautifully done. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe movie is gorgeous.
The English version. I think there was another remake after that.
Possibly.
I feel
whatever
like
it is. The one I'm thinking of, I remember it was being very beautiful, but it was many years ago.
Yeah. That's the one. That's the one.
So
no, it's funny that you were saying like Addie's asking these questions. The response I always get when I ask, I'm like, oh, I have questions about this, and Greg's like, I wish I knew. I have no idea. I guess you'll have to learn.
I'm like, well, we'll read it and find out, like, and I don't want to give away. Like, I know what happens in the next story,
right?
But
like, you don't want to tell them because you're like, we'll find out soon enough.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many characters that are introduced in the first book that are kind of like, oh, like, I kind of want to look at them and be like, they gave this character a name. Pay attention. Like, we're going to see her again.
Right.
But you don't want to say that. So you just kind of let it happen. But it's fun to watch them kind of like perk up. And then it's also fun to listen or to watch them as they're listening to certain things that are like funny in the book. So like something will happen, or the way that
like sparks their,
what resonates, how they giggle, or like, Addie will like roll her eyes on something that's silly, and you'll see Ryder's shoulders shake a little. It's very cool. And Knox is still pretty young, especially to listen to that long of a story with no pictures. And granted, this is the full color edition, like the full collector's color edition. So there are drawings in it, but I don't flip it around and like ruin the story to like the flow.
You read it
right?
like a teacher.
I don't read it that way. I just read it side. Right. I just read it in front of me, and I don't do so. Like Addie was looking at the pictures, and then she was like, I'm gonna go get comfy. But even Knox, when I had stopped last night, I was like, all right. And he was like, and he like popped his head up from where he was sitting, and he was like, don't be done. And I was like, okay. I think he's the thing that threw it over the edge last night, where I was like, if he's tired and just wants to go to bed, we can do the next 2 chapters tomorrow, which I didn't say out loud. But he definitely wanted to do, and I was like, you know what? All 3 of them, like, it's a unanimous vote. Like, we'll just do it.
They were all like, yes, we're right there. Let's keep going.
Yes. So that was one of the ones, and I did count it because it was
you
a 15 chapter little kid book.
Especially out loud. I feel like reading out loud it makes you read a little slower.
Oh yeah.
It makes you like, so those are definite counts, because I feel like you probably spent more time with that than maybe something you would when you're reading in your head and you're just like zip 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 zip. And then you're like, okay, cool. But this takes a lot of thought. So
and I think I might have gathered more understanding of the details because I had to say them, right? You're not just skipping over certain things. I'm not breezing through a paragraph because they're talking about the way the
kids will not allow it.
Right? And I don't necessarily care what the garden looks like, but apparently I do care what the garden looks like because I have to read it all so that they get a picture of what the garden looks like.
You have to build it so they can see it.
Yes. So I think I definitely had a better understanding and appreciation of the details in the story for this one.
That's very interesting.
So, and it's also a nice kind of like routine addition. And I will tell you, they go to sleep so much faster. Right? Like we go upstairs, we brush teeth, they get into their beds, and we don't see them again until the morning.
They're out.
Yeah, and they've kind of, I think it's that break in between that transitions them to bed. So
that's good. It's like a bedtime story without being like an actual bedtime story.
Yeah, without having everybody sit in their beds and like fight over who gets to read what story. Mom choose. It's a mom choose story.
I control this.
I get to decide.
So there's no segue for me, so we're just jumping in.
Perfect. I was like, there's got to be another. Oh, yay! An Emily Henry.
It's a love story in February.
Perfect.
Also a little bit misleading. Did not realize it was going to be a love story.
Oh.
was very excited. But I really enjoyed this book.
Mm-hmm.
People We Meet on Vacation. It's about two childhood friends, very unlikely, very opposite of friends, and just the vacations and adventures that they have every year. I was just, I was in. I was in. I was like,
Yeah.
this is amazing to have like this childhood friend. Well, I guess college, not really childhood, but like,
Younger,
you
like
know,
a longer friendship.
yeah, like a life friendship, a lifelong friendship. And just to see like them revisit, the adventures that they've always had, and them doing it, then trying to bring in their partners at one point to be like, hey, like this is really cool, like we're doing this, and then for it to turn into a love story, I did not see coming. I didn't. I think they had built the friendship so well, and it didn't. There was nothing that alluded to that. Like it didn't feel. You didn't feel any of that. Maybe I just missed that part. I don't know. And then when it happened, I was like,
Wait a minute.
I mean, I don't hate this. Like you definitely want to fall in love with your best friend and like go on these epic adventures with your best friend, but
Right.
also like I just didn't see it coming. So I think it just made it that much better for me. I don't know. I don't
Fair.
know, but it was a great story. And I know we talked about it a little bit before in
We
our
did. And
romance.
I love her stories, right?
That's
But
why I asked if
I'm
that one you read was her.
right? I'm on the opposite side that you are, right?
Oh,
Because you're like,
oh,
that would have surprised me. Where me from like paragraph one, I'm like, all right, let's go. They're getting together. Like, and so if it didn't happen, I'd be like, this was just about friends.
oh.
Like, we have very different, like, I go into it immediately, like, they're going to fall in love. Like, every time, every story. So, like, if I watch something and they don't fall in love, I'm like, what was this?
Wait,
I'm like,
wait.
I'm sorry, is this a drama? Like, what am I watching here?
Yeah, not what I signed up for. Thanks.
Right? But I just assume that every story is a love story, even if it's not. So
Which is so funny because I don't.
my
It's
hijinks is the other side.
yeah, and I am the opposite way. I'm like I was looking for a book the other day, like something I had read. I don't know why, but I like seeing the books that I've read and like new and fresh. I'm like, oh, I read that, I read that, I read that. I'm like, why are all the books that I have read in romance?
Because that's what you read.
Oh, oh, there's a romance piece to it. I'm like,
There's
there's
oh right.
magic. There should be a magic
It's a
section.
magic session. Um I was looking yesterday at my like reader app or whatever, and it had this breakdown, and it was like this many books were romance, this many books were fiction, this many books were historical fiction, this many books were horror. That's your fault. But
It's
like
on the list.
it is. But the fact that it had like a little like circular like graph, and I was like, oh, I love this. I was like, let's see
And
how
which
this
one?
changes. They
Which beat
are
out romance or historical fiction?
they are honestly like there's a little blip for each one, and so I think there's 3 out of the 5 sections that it had identified for me that were very similar in size.
Interesting.
And I was
Okay.
like, all right, I'll
Okay.
take it. Perfect. And I only have one more book.
Ooh,
That
we
brings
did
me to
that
the end.
just right.
Right? I brings me to the book that I finished last night.
Just in
So
time.
we finished The Magician's Nephew, and then the kids went to bed, and I did the finger thing where I like the end of the book, I kind of grabbed it, and I was like, that's enough to stay up a little too late, but not so late that I'm going to pay for it today. And so I actually finished it by 11. I will let you know. I thought that was a very respectable time. And it was the third book in the Emily Wilde
Yes. Yes,
series,
yes, yes.
which
Yes.
does not match the other two. This is the hardback version, and I actually love the way it looks. So I
We
kind of
know
want
what
to
that
go,
means.
right? I kind
There
of want
are
to go
two
get the
more
other ones
hardbacks in your future.
in my future. This is another cute one, right?
We
Heather
like
Fawcett.
it.
We do. Heather Fawcett writes well. It's easy. It's cute. I like the things that happened. I love the way that like Emily and Wendell like where how their relationship works, um, and how they make their way back to his kingdom, which we've been trying to do for 2 books. So, and it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of everything that happens there, and we know that the Fae are not typically very kind when it comes to like overtaking power and things like that, and so they're contending with, it's all from her perspective, so you're contending with her inability to feel comfortable as a mortal in the Fae realm. She's meeting other mortals are there. They're messing around and trying to figure out how to deal with the problem of his stepmother. Like, there's all of these things that are happening And I always want, like, I always worry that he's going to, like, disappoint her in some way, right? Where I'm like, I feel like you're just too nice to her. Like, you like her so much, but also I don't trust you because you're a fairy.
You're a
So,
fae, and
like,
we've
you're
already been told you can't be
right.
trusted.
Like, you're Faye. You were not supposed to trust you. And I just like him, right? And
Yeah.
so we get to see characters from previous books. We get to see many characters from previous books who I loved, like the side characters. We get to see a lot
Mhm.
of those. The different companions that they have. It's great. It's great. It's cute. And I almost didn't want it to be over. Like, I wanted to finish it, but I almost was kind of like, oh, is there more? And
Yes.
part of me was like, well, maybe, like, I remember reading it and being like, well, you could make another book. Like, there's
We could
there's
keep
more things for her to
going.
discover. Like,
Yeah,
could we
and this one just
please?
came out, so who knows? Like
Yeah.
what that maybe there is more. Who
My
knows?
my vote is
Do we
cast.
know?
We don't know. I don't know.
I was gonna say, have we researched it?
We have not, because I didn't want to be disappointed if the answer was no. And knowing that she
Mm.
just came out with this one this month,
Yeah.
I don't want to put
Let her
pressure on her. Like, I
celebrate
do,
this
but I
one.
don't.
Yeah.
I kind of
Yeah,
don't want to be
right.
like, okay, and
And what's next? We
yep,
read it the
one
day
more.
it came out. I know you've been working on
Yep.
it for like years, but like, what
But
else?
could I have more,
Are we
please?
moving on now?
Please, sir. I'd like some more.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. It was cute. It was good. Like I said, I love the way it looks. I love the, like, the,
It
feels
is
good.
super cool. Yeah.
It does. And it's just a well made, well written, enjoyable story.
I
I
have to
think it
tell you, I'm
got
leaning
four.
towards the hardback books that don't have dust covers. Like I
Oh yeah,
like
this one. Mm-mm.
when it is just that book,
Right?
that cover. I don't know, there's something, and maybe just because it's new, like we don't see those a lot.
Right. We don't, and I'm not a big dust cover fan. Like, I use the dust cover as a bookmark.
I would take them off.
Right.
I
So
always remove it.
I don't. I read it with it on, and that just ends up getting annoying because then I feel like it's naked if it's not on. If it doesn't have a designed cover, so
Hmm.
I like this.
Yeah, yeah.
So I, again, another. I don't think that there were any I read this month that I was like, no. I think I liked all
I
of the ones
did
I
not
read.
either. No,
Right.
and I
Except for the two.
I was misled,
Right.
but not disappointed.
Right.
So there's like that's something to be
Exactly.
said, right? And I'm still on track. I'm perfectly on for one a week,
Exactly.
as was my goal. So we're seeing we're seeing it.
We
We're
love the
there.
consistency, right?
Yeah.
Which is perfect. So I did, I think on our Instagram the other day, I had to go on a trip for work, and I think we put up a story and it was like, how many books did we pack to take with us?
I voted five because I knew how many flights you were on. I was like, there's a little bit more information that she's not giving us. She's saying 2 days, but
Yes.
also like 4 flights.
It was
So
four
like that
flights.
has to counter in somewhere. So when you said three, I was like,
I had to
how many
work.
people? How many people?
Most
Okay,
people picked five.
what was the
It
breakdown?
it
Did
was
they?
five. It was 5, 3, and one. Nobody was like one. Absolutely not. Like, who brings
No, we
one?
all know better.
But it was definitely three. I brought three, and I looked as I was walking by at the terminal on the way home. There was like, it was like the book stop, and I was like, no, no. I was like, you're fine. You haven't finished the book you have, and there's another one in your bag. But now I'm at the point where, now that I've finished the ones that I brought, the two that I brought out of the three, I now am at a weird place where I don't know what to start next, because I
Yeah.
have I have Empress that I want to start,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I have Fourth Wing that I also want to start. And so
Okay.
I
Well, guess what? You pick, and I will read it with you.
okay, perfect. Did you not read Empress yet?
No,
Oh,
no,
ooh,
not yet.
dang it. Okay, I don't know, because I want to read them both. So, spoiler alert for when we do the
I
March ones. One of those books may be in it,
right, maybe both.
right? And if you want to read along
I
with us,
Let's make an executive decision. I say let's do Empress because it's a standalone. Well,
okay,
I mean, right now it's the only one that's out.
yes,
I feel like maybe once you jump into Fourth Wing, we know there's 3 books,
we
and
do.
it's probably, you're probably going to feel. So I feel like there's less pressure if we do the Empress
Cool.
because it's one.
I like that a decision was made, because I've literally been warring over it all day. Where
Same.
I've been
Done.
like looking at both of them, like, I have you both. I've carried Empress around to 3 different rooms
Yeah.
because I'm like, do I want to start you, Are
Yes.
you the
Oh,
one?
and this is so perfect. We both finished our books last night. Of course
We
we did.
did.
Of course we did. And tomorrow's March 1st. So, The
It
Empress,
counts.
kick
All
it
right,
off.
Empress. The Empress is what we're reading.
If you want to read along, join our Facebook group.
Yes.
Make sure to subscribe. Did you see? We have 30 subscribers.
I did see that. We've got a nice round, lovely number. I was very
We've got
excited.
more. Yes.
So
Yeah, it's
we
really
love that
exciting.
everybody's here and
So,
hanging out.
and if you're watching and you're not subscribed, please do that.
Subscribe in 25.
Click, 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 click.
What are we going to
All
say in
the
26?
buttons.
You can only subscribe in 25 because it rhymes.
I mean, you have to subscribe in 25.
Yeah.
And if you're not, then I don't know.
Then I have to come up
We'll
with a
think
new
of
rhyme and
something.
it's not going to be as cool.
Oh, and it'll probably be more passive aggressive. So they're just
Right?
going to get worse from here on out. You should just subscribe now. Make sure
Just
you're on
subscribe
the winning side.
The winning side in 25. Perfect.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward. We've got a lot of cool topics that we have kind of placed for the coming weeks, and then we also have our book retreat in the works. So we'll have information out for that one. That
Coming in
includes
May.
yes, our first book retreat is May, and then I
Uh,
think we have a summer
yes,
one
yes,
that we're
yes.
planning too.
Yes, yes, yes. So much
So
excitement.
agreed, agreed. So until we come back to you in just 1 week, happy reading, and thank you for being here with us.
Yeah.
It was great to have you join us for today's chat. If you'd like to continue the conversation, provide a recommendation, or simply say hi, pop over to Instagram at wine.read.wine. Also, if you're the review type person, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave us an honest review on your favorite podcast player. Or leave us a comment on our YouTube channel. We'll see you on the next episode. Happy reading!